Salut din Chișinău, Moldova. By me here I have the Arcul de Triomphe. So it's not just Paris that has an Arc de Triomphe. Also got one down the road in Bucharest, the capital of Romania. But let's be frank, the majority of lads who are coming here to Chișinău are not coming to check out the historic architecture, of which there is actually only a little bit here in the center of Chișinău. They are here to have a jolly old time and to party hard. So, how good is the value for partying here in Chișinău, the capital of Moldova? What is the bang for your buck in Moldova's capital and biggest city? Let's go find out. Hai să mergem!
SAR Experience.
So behind me here you can see a little bit of the rush hour in Chișinău. Got a heavy traffic around this time, about 6 o'clock. And transport, I mean, the first thing you're probably going to do from the airport is take the taxi in, and that should cost you about, should be less than $10 US to take a taxi from the airport. The airport is not super far outside the city, probably going to be somewhere to 20 and 40 minutes depending on travel, maybe up to an hour if you're going at this time. Well, if you were very early in the morning, I guess, coming into the city. Now it's evening, so the traffic is going the other way. So that's what I'll say about transport. Taxis, basically very cheap compared to, say, Western Europe or North America. Going to be somewhere, you know, probably $3 or $4 maximum in the city here to take a taxi. Next thing, probably going to be wondering about is where are you going to stay? So an Airbnb, like in the central district here in Chișinău, is probably going to be somewhere between 50 and 80 euros a night, depending on the quality and exact location. So that's about, you know, $60 US, we'll say, to, you know, 85, 90, 100 US a night. So again, you know, if you compare it to a big city further Western Europe, it's obviously reasonably competitive, going to be cheaper, at least 30% cheaper, maybe up to half, depends where you're comparing it to. And then top hotels, probably going to be somewhere around, you know, 200 to 250 US. So yeah, probably 180 to 230-ish euros for one of the nice hotels in the city center, so more of 4 or 5 star vibe. So other things that you need to consider, of course, where you're going to eat afterwards. Maybe you're into wellness and fitness like some of my clients are, and you actually want to go and shop at a local market, grow your own food. And there, this, especially for fruit and veg, Chișinău, because of the region we're in, you just go down the market and it's going to be for, you know, for pennies. It's going to be extremely cheap to buy local produce here. You go down to the market, and I mean, people are selling in the street even before you get to the market. They're coming in, the farmers from the countryside, and they actually just sell it basically informally on the street near to the market to gain the competitive advantage. But you can also go down to the central market here and you get every type of amazing fruit and veg that you find in this region, and it's going to be extremely cheap compared to, say, probably what you're used to buying it in the supermarket, you know, a Whole Foods kind of level of quality, natural goodness, but for probably, I don't know, 20% of the price maybe. It's hard to compare exactly.
Este deci o mâncare, ajută-mă, mai scurt, fierbi carnea și grăsimea lui se, cum?
În limba rusă ce este?
Haladeț.
Haladeț, da. Am mâncat în România, nu aici, dar în România și în Ucraina. Nu îmi place foarte mult.
La noi se numește răcitură, noi se spune răcitură.
Ok, răcitură. Bine. Este popular aici, dar îmi place mai mult sarmală.
Okay.
And if you go here and eat at some of the nice restaurants with local food, really great and tasty. You have that traditional Moldovan cuisine, but also you just have lots of restaurants in the center that have, you know, a wide array of different European mainly cuisines. Yeah, if you go here and eat in a restaurant, typically you're going to pay maybe somewhere between 15 and 30 euros a person before we throw in the alcohol, you know, for a meal at one of the nicer restaurants here in the center of Chisinau. Moldova has great wine, so let's get into that next. So the big thing in Moldova is wine. You cannot really go anywhere in Moldova and not bump into a vineyard, since most of the country seems to do it either professionally, like a proper vineyard where I am, with wine tasting, which we're about to get into here, or they just have it beside their house. In the countryside, they just make wine. It's like the national pastime. And Moldovan wine, internationally, in my opinion, is completely underrated. It is delicious, and you just have so many of these vineyards. Most of Moldova is rural after all, has beautiful weather, like we're here in September. It's actually my birthday today on top of it, so it's kind of a bit of a tradition either to be at a vineyard in Ukraine, but unfortunately with the current Russo-Ukrainian war, it's a bit safer to be here in Moldova. But I've actually done many tours of the vineyards here. I've been to Mlădița Mici, Cricova, which are famous for their catacombs or underground labyrinths that go on for kilometers and kilometers and kilometers. Plus then you have more the chateau kind of experience, the older style look, like in Purcar. Also been to Chateau Vertelli, also been to Castel Mimi, which is also another well-known vineyard here in Moldova. And today I'm in Poiana, Vinăria Poiana, which is the Poiana vineyard. So, noroc to Moldovan wine. So definitely this is a very good value experience to do. Come out, maybe stay in a vineyard, enjoy the wine tasting, enjoy the great Moldovan food and wine. And it's going to be a fraction of the cost of doing something similar, say in France or Italy, which are the other big, European nations are known for wine. Also Spain or Portugal, somewhere like that. Somewhere like here, probably the experience of, it's going to be 150, 200 euros probably to stay the night, eat at the restaurant and enjoy the wine tasting, all inclusive, for this beautiful view that we got here out into the Moldovan countryside. So for me, that is pretty good value. So enjoy. So then for miscellaneous things, like maybe you want to hit the fitness, the gym, one with a nice, sauna, swimming pool, all that kind of stuff. Probably going to be pretty comparable to prices further west, actually, for something like that. If you want a really nice one, then, with the pool and a view, I think the membership was like closer to 150 euros, 160 euros per month, so $200 a month. So definitely pretty comparable to actually being further west. But if you're going at the lower end, you just want to work out in a gym with weights that's decent and clean in a good location. Actually, you can get that pretty cheaply. My gym that I currently am paying for, the one near where I stay here, it's about per month, probably about 25, 30 US dollars. So, 22 to 25 euros. So that's what you get for the kind of basic, just go in and work out. But if you want more of the spa and pool experience on top of it, then you're gonna have to pay probably something pretty comparable to other cities that are further west in Europe or in North America. It's around that more or less 200 bucks a month range. So yeah, the savings are probably on the lower end in terms of things like gyms. It can often be the case that here in the region that something like a gym seen more as a social networking place as well. So it's not just about being able to go and actually work out on the machines. It's actually a place where people who have a certain socioeconomic status socialize together, and that is part of why it has a comparable price tag on it, obviously to make it more exclusive. So assuming you're a single guy coming here, then you're going to be interested in the local dating scene. What do Moldovan women actually look like in general, and whether they are into you, the foreign guy coming here. So aesthetically, Moldovans are a bit of a mix. I like to say they're like the Latinas of the region, but really that would be Romania. And here it's a little bit more mixture, because you also have a lot of people who have origins further to the east, so like Ukrainians and Russians. And here, Romanians tend to be a little bit darker complexion on the whole, and probably brown eyes, darker hair, maybe a little bit shorter in stature than you're going to see further to the east. But as I said, it's pretty mixed, so I wouldn't say that they're completely Latina looking, just a little bit more than the rest of the region. Also, you have some other ethnicities like Gagauz, Bulgarians, Roma, who are here. So they also tend to be a bit darker than other we'll say Eastern Europeans. But definitely in terms of the average level of beauty compared to, say, Western Europe or North America, it is very high here in Moldova. And it's basically, in my opinion, on average, Moldovan girls are better looking than in neighboring Romania, maybe slightly less than in neighboring Ukraine. So that'll give you a good gauge if you're familiar with the region a little bit more where it stands. But definitely for coming from North America, Western Europe, it's called kind of much of a muchness. Women on average here are slim, very little obesity, which is the big problem I find when I go back to say Ireland or the UK is like just the amount of obesity in general. That obviously affects young women as well. So on the whole, definitely a very good spot in terms of the aesthetics. But are they into foreigners here? Guys from North America, Western Europe, maybe Latin America, since a few Latinos also come here. I think it depends because I meet guys come up to me basically because of my YouTube channel. And I always ask them to describe their experiences here. And a common response is that basically they don't get very far with the local ladies. The little girls are not so interested in them. And then I ask, obviously, some questions like, do you speak Romanian? Or, Russian is pretty much understood here and widely spoken as well as the national language Romanian. And the answer inevitably is no, 95% of the time. So I'm like, well, how long are you staying here? We have a rise of digital nomads, so quite often they are staying for longer than a weekend or something. They're coming for, say, a few weeks, a month. But they're not really interested in staying long-term in Moldova. I mean, that's fine. But for girls here, I remember I had a Romanian teacher one stage who was from Moldova. She was probably about 21, and she had an American boyfriend. So I asked her, hey, so what do you think of the foreign guys who come to Moldova? And she said, well, if they're tourists, yeah, zero interest. But if they're an American guy who lives in Moldova and is up to something interesting with some long-term prospects, then yes, that is very interesting. So I think if you are coming here, and also her American boyfriend did speak Romanian as well, even though she spoke English, so it wasn't like she needed it for communication, just the fact that he was integrated in doing something interesting, he wasn't just passing through, made him, in her eyes, more interesting and obviously higher value. I think that's kind of key. Guys come in on a weekend that maybe 15, 20 years ago when Moldovans, the economic situation was a lot worse than today and they couldn't travel. Now at least 35% of Moldovans have Romanian passports, so they can travel everywhere in the European Union and live. And actually I suspect amongst young people it's a lot higher than 35%. It seems like about 80% when I talk to them. So in general, coming for a weekend, not so interested really in Moldova or the region in general, probably not going to work out for you, judging by the response I get. Having been here quite a lot over the last decade and speaking Romanian and also Russian and spending a good amount of time, I can say that, and actually having a local social circle, I should also point out, which is very important, I would say that if girls here become familiar with you, then they get very interested, a little bit like my Romanian teacher told me. But if you're just showing up and hitting the club, nowadays, probably they're not going to be so interested. I think 10 years ago was different. I did come to Moldova also. I think the first time was 2009, and I came quite regularly around 2011, 2012, 2013, 14, maybe up until 15. And then it was a very different situation. I think a lot of girls were interested in foreigners. They were more of a novelty. And yeah, most of them were looking to leave Moldova at the time. And I think those who wanted to leave have already left. So probably not going to find too many of those nowadays. So if you are interested in, dating the local lovelies of Moldova, probably going to be a more long-term project, and you want to be investing probably a couple of months into it at least. Integrate, learn the language, at least one of the two that's widely spoken here. Probably going to be better if you learn Romanian nowadays, if you're actually going to focus on Moldova than Russian, and build up the local social circle, and then you have a good shot. Which language do you think someone who's going to spend time in Chisinau should learn? Should they learn Romanian or Russian?
A few years ago, I probably said Russian, but and not because I like it, but because it was a matter of fact. Most places were kind of like Russian-centric, but now I've seen a shift towards, especially with the war and all, seen a shift towards Romanian. Romanian English. It should really help you go along the way. Go all the
Okay,
way.
because I think that everybody in Moldova will at least understand Romanian,
Yeah.
even if they're native Russian speakers. So this-
Actually, like most Russian speakers from Moldova, they perfectly understand Romanian. They just don't put enough effort to exercise it,
Okay.
enough to use it. Again, something that will probably change in the following years.
Okay, that's good. So learn Romanian, that would have been my suggestion as well. So behind me here we have a very typical scene from the region. You got a guy with a bouquet of flowers looking at his watch because his date is a bit late. Not sure, you don't normally see girls in this region with their high heels off. Normally they're wearing them, but yes, the nightlife here in Chisinau, definitely high octane. I think there's a big difference between the summer months and the winter. Summer has a lot of more kind of open air, as you'd expect. Kind of festival style, and you see that here in the center of Chisinau. Actually, some of them are even completely free that you can go to, and others there's a cover charge, and that tends to be a little bit more exclusive, obviously, but really, really cool. And then in the winter, things are definitely more concentrated. I would say that for the clubbing in particular, it's probably only one club, two maximum, that you want to go to in the winter. It's interesting that they know who I am, and I go to this club, but they do not want me to promote it at all because they're not interested in having foreign tourists come to the club. Yes, if they don't know you, well, basically you'll have to have a table to be able to let into the club. If you're a guy, right? If you're a girl, obviously it's a bit different, but if you're a guy and you're a foreigner and they don't know you, they will not give you the table, according to them. And at the entrance, they're almost certainly not going to let you in. And I've actually talked to guys who were really shocked that they weren't let into the club. And they said, yeah, why can't I get into the club? Connor, what's going on? I said, yeah, if you don't have a table and you're a guy, they don't really care because there are lots of local guys with money who go there every week and they dump an enormous amount of money on a table at the club. So that is their target demographic. So just remember that sometimes there's a misperception that because things are socioeconomically less developed here, that they're desperate to get the tourists in and get lots of money. Actually, the best places in the city are not relying on the business of tourists because there are very few in the first place in Chisinau. So they're not seeking that business, and you probably need an insider like me, basically, to be able to go to those places. But definitely winter versus summer are quite different in terms of style. As I said, obviously the weather here is beautiful. It's still actually quite warm, and it's now mid-September, and there's still outdoors parties going on here with cool electronic music. And then, as I said, during the winter, you have kind of the more traditional, fancier clubs, and to get into the better ones, you definitely need to know what you're doing and not just show up at the door without a table or without knowing people or being known in the city as a tourist. In terms of the prices, I would say that like a table at one of these top clubs, you're probably going to have a minimum spend of somewhere between 400 and 600 euros, so probably about $500 minimum. And if you're hitting the cocktail bars, then probably it's about 7 or 8 euros for a cocktail here, one of the better places in Chisinau. That you can just rock up to and go into. There's not going to be probably really any face control even for a cocktail bar. Maybe a couple of exceptions on that, but in general, and that is the price point. So probably about $8-9 US. So obviously quite competitive when you compare it to the big cities in Western Europe, like in Paris or in London, or obviously across the pond in New York or San Francisco or LA. It's going to be significantly more for a cocktail, one of the top places. And finally, I would say that before you go out, you kind of need to decide in Chisinau what kind of place you're going to go to that night, because some of the places, especially if you're a guy, require kind of more fancier attire, like maybe a dress shirt and no trainers kind of policy. And then you have more hipster places where obviously it's more a casual vibe, and you kind of need to go with the right dress code for each place. Like you don't want to be showing up overdressed for the hipster electronic music party You're going to kind of just look at a place, and by the same token, you can't show up in, you know, trainers or less fancy attire for a top club that's going to require that as face control. So yeah, make your decision, that's what I say before you go out, about which kind of place you're going to, and then stick to that for the evening. So, talking about taking your shot. Wayne Gretzky, a famous Canuck of Eastern European origins, Polish, Ukrainian, Belarusian. He once said, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. And down below is the application form to the in-person Zara experience with me. And it's now, when I'm filming this, September 2023. And I'm not bringing in clients to Russia or Belarus. Haven't been for a couple of years with the Russo-Ukrainian war. And sadly, at the moment, I'm not taking clients also to Ukraine. I hope that sometime soon it will be possible to go back there and live the Zara experience like before. Fingers crossed, do peremohi. But I have been bringing my clients to here, obviously in Chisinau. Crazy Chisinau, Moldova. I've been living it up large, having a blast. We had many clients. I think we're up to maybe close to 10 clients who have come here over the last 18 months. And, you know, it's one of the cities that obviously I've covered extensively in this video. And you gotta juxtapose it. Like I talked about how the guys I talked to here who've come up to me have described, they didn't really have much local ladies, and they find it pretty tough actually in Chisinau. And I've even had a consulting client who was born in Kazakhstan. He was a Kazakhstan Deutsche, so someone who's ethnic German, and moved to Germany from Kazakhstan, but can speak Russian fluently, and seemed to have his stuff together. And he just wanted some consulting advice. I also provide that. There's actually a link to that down below as well in the description to the video. And he came here, did his solo mission. My advice, he went to the club that I told him it's probably gonna be hard to get in if you're on your own, without a table. And there you go. He showed up. He gave me some feedback afterwards. That was the one blot on his trip, basically, was the fact that when he went there, he was shocked that they would not let him in. And you can do that. You can do your DIY solo trip. But you're going to run into these issues here in Chisinau, especially if it's the winter time. Summertime is a bit different, as I said. You can go and rock up. There are some parties actually over there. Probably even tonight still going on. But if you show up in the winter in particular, you better be with the insider. If you want to get inside the best spots, you know, we're going to be there. We're going to have a table. We're going to party like rock stars. And you're going to enjoy that experience, the party side of it. But also, if you're thinking long-term about spending time here in Moldova or maybe in the region, I advise guys to spend 3 to 12 months per year. And this will be your first step in exploring that possibility. Maybe Chisinau, Moldova is the city for you. With many of my clients, we actually go to a few different cities, check them out. They learn a lot. I'm able to see, you know, on the dating side, you know, what their weak spots are and coach them on that. But in general, we're building up social circle, cultural knowledge, maybe looking at the investment side of things, which is going to be the best fit for them. It might be that they want to live in one city, or maybe they're actually going to split their time up in the region. So this is what we deal with on the Zara experience. And one other thing that we do work on also on the dating side is your Instagram. It's not just purely for dating, it's also for networking in general, is that Instagram nowadays is like a CV for a lot of things, so you need to have that sorted. And we actually get a few of the pics that we'll put on your profile during the in-person experience. Find that's actually pretty big value added to get that sorted. It seems to be something that a lot of clients don't really have on point when they first come. So down below is the application form. If you think you want to take your shot, then down it is below. But you should go and look at 2 playlists, because I also cover 3 other cities at the moment. They are Riga, the capital of Latvia up in the Baltics. Very different in style. People are tall there, tall in Riga, and blonde, basically. So lots of blonde bombshells in the bars and the clubs there. Again, a little bit like here, since I touched on it with the clubs and stuff, that The best club doesn't want tourists. The bouncers actually told me that. They don't want tourists there. They consider me a local. If you speak Latvian or Russian, it's going to go a long way in Riga. Or you can be with the insider, we can go together. So pretty similar modus operandi for Riga. Also going to amazing Almaty in Kazakhstan, the Big Apple, just off the steppes of Central Asia. Really amazing city, particularly in summer. So beautiful there. Got the mountains nearby, you got lakes, canyons. It's pretty phenomenal, and also pretty decent party scene, and can be an interesting fit for a certain type of guy. Then we have got Warsaw, which is becoming the capital city in my eyes for this whole region, which I'm calling New Europe. And there the city is booming. I think the population increased, they said, about 20% in the last 18 months because of the war. Obviously, Russo-Ukrainian war has led to a lot of Ukrainians moving there. Also got a lot of Belarusians who are exiled in Lithuania and in Warsaw, Lithuania and in Poland. So a lot of them are obviously in the capital, Warsaw. And they kind of have their own subcultures. There's like mini Belarus, and I guess we call it, like, if we take it from the American example, like Little Italy. You got little Belarus and you got little Ukraine, but they're not little. They're all over the city.
Where are we?
We're now in Warsaw, and we're having fun in like Belarusian bar.
Because there's such a big percentage of the city's population, definitely the city center nowadays. That's also super interesting, also great for setting up as, I think, a base for a lot of guys in the region. You got the pretty Poles, the cute Ukrainians, and the beautiful Belarusians. So first thing to go and check out before you go to the application form is my playlist covering those cities. Also give you a bit more of the flavor of the Zara experience, in-person experience with me. If you go and look at those videos, that playlist. Then the second one is like a playlist of tutorials for dating the 9s and 10s, which is basically shorthand for saying the super beautiful ladies of Eastern Europe. So go through that. There's probably about 25, 30 videos already on that playlist. So very valuable to go through. Go through those two first, if you're not familiar with them, and then down below, you have the Zara Experience application form. And maybe, just maybe, you want to dive even deeper. I'm going to put up my vodcast playlist. There, it's probably about 50 hours of content, at least, with my extensive vodcast, but they do go on obviously quite a bit, so probably flick through them, pick out some that are interesting to you if you want to dive deeper into the mentality of people here in this region, Eastern Europe and parts of Central Europe. Obviously, since the Russo-Ukrainian war has led to me expanding the number of countries that I am now covering. So it is already the evening, the sun has set just behind me in Chisinau. So I'm gonna say la revedere, which is goodbye in Romanian. And yeah, catch you in the next video. Ciao, ciao.
Zara Experience.